In terms of talking about food, I think my understanding of food has come not from a qualification, not from working in food and beverage, not even from eating food myself. It's really come from listening to people who know food. We saw Rashish, classic examples of people who understand this, and I guess if you want to gain knowledge about something, it's best to listen to people who really know that business. So my perspectives on food have largely developed through an understanding of listening to what some great food writers, people who have the passion, have talked about. As I was thinking about what to speak, I'm feeling more encouraged now because the session earlier was a great lead into what I actually wanted to make the essence of my discussion with you. I think it's important as a hotelier to tell you that for me, differentiating the hotel business and the restaurant business is the key to anybody understanding the success within the ambit of the hospitality industry, if you like. I think chefs like, whether it is Chef Hemant Oberoi or Chef Manjeet Gill, these are probably exceptions in my mind to the rule of the fact that great chefs do not come from hotel backgrounds. I think, and you know, my own experience tells me that the kind of restrictiveness which is put into how structures need to be in large companies and large hotels, it just naturally curtails creativity in my view. Even as I was a general manager, I would always understand that chefs in kitchens, if you kind of restrict their ability to work, are not going to perform. And I have several examples of that as well, where I've seen chefs who felt stifled in the environment of hotels. On a more lighter note, I just wanted to quickly share the story. Many of you know Rahul Akerkar, I think. So last year, and some of you may have been in that room, we were in a conclave. It was the next Oberoi School alumni conclave, and Rahul was speaking, and he was espousing this thing about hotel chefs and restaurant chefs. And so one of the things he said is that, so chefs have to work in this really stifling environment, and they never get the best raw materials because their procurement guys are on the take. And then he goes on to say, and you know what? I put your concierges on my take and get them to send your guests to my restaurants. To me, however flippant that may have sounded, there are some very key messages when you try and understand that indeed chefs have to be seen as a breed of, whether they're artists or whether they're sculptors. It's pretty much like that, and Chef Gagan's attitude clearly reflected that. So I'm a clear believer that we need to differentiate this business, and that's why it's a bit like how advertising in years ago, where you began to see these creative hot shops coming out separately, which allowed people to kind of really create advertising, and then you separated out whatever else, media buying and account management and all of that. And really, I think globally, hotels and hotel companies and large brands have begun to understand that. It's difficult to kind of let go or acknowledge the fact that, you know, we don't know food and beverage. I'm a hotelier. I don't claim to be an expert in food and beverage. I believe there's some amazing expertise which, when you can bring together in a marriage of sorts. So I see a lot of work happening globally in India, in our hotels as well, about now beginning to see outsourcing as an option, even in luxury hotels and upper upscale hotels. And I think here again, it's that, again, the restaurateurs think only we know what we do, and the hoteliers think only we know what they do, what we do. Even when you try and bring them together, the restaurant, the chef who owns the restaurant, he's built up his reputation, will have some very clear, I need to do it this way, this way, this way, this way. And the hotelier would say, but you know, you're on my premises, this is our profile, so you also have to do this, this, and this. And invariably, conflicts start emerging when you do that. I think if restaurateurs understand how the environment of a hotel, what hotels bring to the table in terms of attracting the right kind of people from a service staff perspective, understanding how sometimes design works better if they understand the concept of the food. These are things which I know that we in Starwood do a lot of work on this, particularly in the US, where food and beverage in hotels is a very, very small part of their business. And as we work with not just restaurants and chefs, but actually with companies who just specialize in food and beverage, we've seen ourselves getting better at bringing the right restaurants into our premises when there is this common understanding. I mean, you have to realize that, it has to be what kind of a restaurant for what kind of a hotel, but the hotel should be under no illusions that it can run, whether it's a fine dining restaurant in a luxury hotel on its own. Even general managers, and I think there are a few in this room, I'd like to believe that many are, as they understand the dynamics of the business. I mean, you look at owners of hotels, and we as hoteliers, when we educate them on how the business runs, how the P&L runs, and tells them what great margins you make on rooms, and how, food and beverage is never really going to make you any money, but you need to have it. Sometimes we're now victims of creating that perception ourselves. And I think we always understood the reality. And so when you ask a general manager to be a business manager, he'll say, that real estate space where the restaurants are, is making a gross margin of maybe 20, 25%, and I'm making 90% on the rooms I sell. And therefore, I think even owners of hotels now, and I do a lot of my work with owners as we try and build our business, they're getting smarter, they're getting savvier, they're getting sharper. I'd like to believe that they are themselves now proactively, when they come and talk to us, talk about food and beverage separately and say, you know what, this is how we want to do it, and we really don't want to do your restaurants. So that's a reality which as an industry we begin to understand. I think it'll open up a whole new range of possibilities, bring the expertise together of what hotels do well, what restaurateurs do well, and bring it into a hotel space. Requires us to look at a lot of things. Design is important. Today, as I advise an owner on what kind of a hotel to build, I'll always say, try and give as much street side access as you can to your F&B. You simply can't put food and beverage on rooftops or adjoining banquet areas and expect people to go there. Then again, I think as we look, and one of the things I believe we really do well is that we always see ourselves as a lifestyle branded company in Starwood because we have such distinctive brands. So clearly, in looking at that lifestyle, food and beverage is very much a lifestyle. We'd like to have partners who understand the concept of lifestyle in terms of the product of food and beverage. And I don't claim to know all these concepts really well, but I can tell you that even more chefs, as they understand what kind of innovations they need to do in their food, are always now much more conscious about what's the lifestyle of that consumer who's coming into their restaurant, which really brings me to where I think innovation needs to happen in food and beverage, on the premise that assuming that there are great chefs. They know how to do good food. Your neighbor and competitor is also likely to be doing very good food. So it really comes out of what's your ability to then package this whole thing, position it, market it, price it. A lot of chefs will admit themselves that because I'm a great chef, I may not be a great businessman. And when you begin to look at how you can do this all together, it comes back to my point about how partnership with hotels will assist you, because that's our business. We understand how to kind of position, brand, what this new lifestyle consumer requires. Today, maybe even 5 years ago, the concept of food blogging didn't exist, right? Today, it's at the heart of how your restaurant gets perceived. Now, again, you take a great chef who really is focused on every day, he lives, breathes the kind of food he churns out, unless he's able to understand that this is indeed what my consumers want. Some great chefs have failed for exactly this reason, and some great hoteliers have failed for exactly this reason, where we sometimes sit in these ivory towers of ours and believe that we know what our customers want. It's only more recently, largely due to social media, that our customers are beginning to tell us what they want, and we don't have a choice but to make sure we deliver. I'll kind of use a small example to amplify what I'm trying to communicate. So when you take your guest or your diner who's coming into your restaurant, or a guest who's staying into the hotel, today we have to have the ability to understand what I may call the trip persona, if you like. So as an analogy to a hotel guest, and you can apply this to a restaurant guest as well. So the same guest, so Arjun, you're a great example of such a guest, where on one visit to a hotel, you're a corporate, busy business traveler, in and out for meetings, And therefore what you need and what you want and how you want the hotel to react is in a particular way. The second time, as you do often, you're going to attend a big conference, you're going to attend a big event, and suddenly what you want, how you want to kind of plan that trip is different. And the third time, you're taking dad to Wimbledon, you're taking a family out to the same hotel again, your persona is completely different again. Do we have the ability to recognize the different personas of the same consumer? Therein lies the trick of really, today what I think training, learning, development is all about. It is giving our associates that ability using technology, literally as you say, knowledge on their fingertips. And technology which today a lot of people have begun to use, proximity softwares and what have you, to really recognize and understand, because what's happened is that our guests, our diners in our restaurants, they all think they're brands unto themselves. I can almost certainly say that 99% of people in this room would be Facebook users themselves, have an account. It's quite funny, right, when you look at these changing paradigms. Many of us, certainly of my generation, would remember that some of us kept diaries when we were young, and our diaries were so personal to us, right? You really, God forbid, anybody who read your diary. Today on Facebook, we want the whole world to know what we were writing in those diaries, right? Everything what I'm doing every minute, I see people putting onto Facebook. This is the changing dynamics just based on the demographics. Again, I think, was it Chef Gagan or Veer who made references to these younger people, the chef who was asking the questions there at 23, I think you clearly define the millennial, and many of you here define what Gen Y is. Often, you know, a business leader like myself, my biggest challenge remains that how do I stay connected with this generation who are our consumers, who are the people who are going to come and eat in our restaurants? That's where the innovation needs to happen. That's where the imagination needs to happen. And many people, through our experience, through our learning, through our working for Oberoi's and Taj's and Starwoods and who have you, really begin to believe that, you know, we know everything there is to know about this industry. Perhaps from your generation's perspective, but they're not your consumers anymore. It is Generation Y and the millennials who are your consumers, who are your associates, who are opinion makers. Today when people ask me, do I still have any mentors? And I mentor a lot of people. I have a lot of mentors. I mean, in my office, I have 3 or 4 people between the ages of 25 and 30 who are more or less officially titled my mentors. It's their job to keep me understanding what they do and why they do when they do things in the social media and online space. Why, and that kind of talks about why you have such great successes even in the online space with the Zomatos of the world, because, they've captured the understanding of the millennials. So any innovation we do, we need to keep a focus on that. I guess it would be remiss for me not to talk about what's happening in food and beverage innovation in hotels, given that that's what I was originally supposed to talk about. So to be practical, I think there is a space for food and beverage in hotels. There has to be. But it's, I think, more about making sure that you're able to provide, I would call it comfort food to your guests who dine in. And again, bring in some great quality restaurants out there. The biggest meal a guest will always eat in a hotel is breakfast. That's a proven fact, right? 95% of your guests will eat breakfast. In the old days, we used to say, if you give him a good breakfast, he'll come back for dinner. Today, he probably won't come back for dinner because of the choices he has. So you keep the focus on that breakfast, and within that, keep the focus on the lifestyle changes we are seeing in our lives, more healthy food and all the good things which kind of you read about. These actually, and we have enough research and survey to tell us that when our guests feed us back on their experiences in the hotel, more and more we see them talking about finding the food better because of more healthier choices. And so that's a big focus area continuously for hotels as to how do you do that. I think many hotels, particularly branded hotel chains like ourselves, we believe it's important to try and create at least one signature facility which is operated by you. It could be your all-day dining restaurant, it could be a specialty dining restaurant, but what you should do is, if you're making such an effort to build your brand, and you have a lot of loyal customers to that brand, it's not a bad option to look at piggybacking a specific restaurant brand for that brand. So, for example, if you were to go to a Western, you'd look for a Prego Italian restaurant when you go there, because we believe that because it's an international brand, we've got a good mix of travelers. Italian food is comfortable food for a large variety of people. So we kind of said we will have that as a signature. So we encourage our hotels to create a signature dining facility, which kind of can become a destination. And by the way, it doesn't need to have to be food. It could very much be an alcohol-based facility as well. And I think that's also where we're seeing a shift happening in hotels. I mean, selling alcohol is a very high-margin business for hotels, because there's just this perception, though, it's got to be expensive. So he's made up his mind that I'm going to spend more when I go and drink at a hotel than go and drink in a bar which is not in a hotel. And I think hotels are great opportunities. Many of you may be familiar with the brand of Starwood called W. The whole premise of the brand W is based on creating whatever they do with food and beverage as a destination to the hotel. So like the lobbies in W's often in the evenings convert into clubs, the lobby itself. And you'd invariably find bars and drinking areas surrounding the lobby space. And that becomes a great attraction. Depends, of course, on what kind of location, destination you're in. But I think hoteliers can do a lot more by looking at the bars business. In fact, in the W terminology, we don't say F&B, we say B&F, because the focus is more on beverage than on food. And then that becomes a kind of a way in which that brand begins to use innovation in food and beverage to focusing on alcohol and beverages rather than on food. So I'm not taking away from the fact that food and beverage will kind of remain a certain part of the hotel space, but I think the sooner we realize that restauranting and hoteliering are indeed distinct businesses, chefs, smart F&B professionals are a different breed. The examples which Gagan was giving about his experiences in the Taj, I see it every day. I see that some of our most creative and our most talented chefs in all our hotels are people who are kind of crying out to be let loose. And just the dynamics, right? You've got to have parity in salaries, you've got to have parity in a lot of things. He's got to wear a chef's cap, he's got to be groomed, he can't be kind of tardy. Now, when you put all these kind of things, he believes you're restricting his creativity. If there's no other reason, this is a good enough reason for us as hoteliers to understand that even if you get great people, I'm not sure how long they're going to stay with you before they venture out to become entrepreneurs. The space is big. India is such a nascent market in food and beverage. It'll reach $100 billion in 2020. So there's just still a lot of opportunity there. And I think it'll foster more creation, innovation when we have great chefs allowed to kind of build great restaurants and have great consumers as well. So thank you very much. Those were my insights to share with you.